you're educated or illiterate, whether you live on the boulevard or in the alley, you're going to catch hell just like I am. We're all in the same boat. And we all are going to catch the same hell from the same man. Suffered here in political oppression at the hands of the white man, economic exploitation at the hands of the white man, and social degradation at the hands of the white man. Now, in speaking like this doesn't mean that we're anti-white, but it does mean we're anti-exploitation, we're anti-degradation, we're anti-oppression. And if the white man doesn't want us to be anti-him, let him stop oppressing and exploiting and degrading.
Malcolm X was a mover and a shaker. He moved blacks in America to start thinking for themselves. And he shook the political, economic, and social structure of this country to the awareness of what the black man can do.
And every time you look at yourself, be you black, brown, red, or yellow, a so-called Negro, you represent a person who poses such a serious problem for America because you're not wanted. Once you face this as a fact, then you can start plotting a course that will make you appear intelligent instead of unintelligent.
When others were speaking of dreams, Malcolm X was awakening the black masses to the vision of doing for yourself. Malcolm X was on a mission, and his dedication to the success of that mission was viewed as a threat to the white power structure and the black elite.
Just as the slave master in that day used Tom, the house Negro, to keep the field Negroes in check, the same old slave master today has Negroes who are nothing but modern Uncle Toms, 20th century Uncle Toms, to keep you and me in check, keep us under control, keep us passive and peaceful and nonviolent. That's Tom making you nonviolent. It's like when you go to the dentist and the man is going to take your tooth. You're going to fight him when he starts pulling. So they squirt some stuff in your jaw called Novocaine to make you think they're not doing anything to you. So you sit there, and because you got all that Novocaine in your jaw, you suffer peacefully.
Malcolm X was a student of history, and he learned well.
Of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward all research. And when you see that you got problems, all you have to do is examine the historic method used all over the world by others who had problems similar to yours. And once you see how they got theirs straight, then you know how you can get yours straight.
Malcolm X was an African in America whose words and deeds not only affected the masses of African Americans, but created such a scare in the white-controlled political, economic, and social structure of this country that his presence was perceived as a national threat. But what was it about Malcolm X that caused him to become the man that stirred such feelings in both black and white? Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little on May 19, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska. As a youth, Malcolm Little saw and felt firsthand the effect of white racism when his family was forced to move from Omaha by Klansmen because of his father's belief and following of Marcus Garvey. While living in Michigan, his father was killed at the hands of a group of white racist assassins. Institutionalized racism ultimately destroys the remaining Little family, with a series of events which include young Malcolm's hope for a legal career being undermined by his school teacher, even though he was at the head of his class. Soon his mother is committed to a mental institution, and the children are disposed of in various ways. At 15, Malcolm Little drops out of school and begins to make a life for himself on the streets. In February 1946, at the age of 25, Malcolm Little was sentenced in Massachusetts to 8 to 10 years imprisonment for burglary. And during his incarceration, his awakening and development began.
When I was in prison, I read an article, and don't be shocked when I say I was in prison. You still in prison. That's what America means, prison.
When I study Malcolm, I kind of compartmentalize his life in terms of 3 phases. And the first phase was that Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska in 1925. And as you know, the Malcolm X Foundation, under the leadership of Rowena Moore, has maintained the property and birth site of Malcolm X. And so I think when you look at Malcolm's young life, he was born in Omaha, which is why we are going to be involved in an upcoming celebration and commemoration in honor of Malcolm X. The second phase I look at is when Malcolm Little became Malcolm X, and this was during the time that he was incarcerated and found the Islamic community for guidance and changed his name from Malcolm Little to Malcolm X. The last phase that I look at his life was when he became El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, and that was during the time that he was in Africa and in the Middle East and began to articulate some specific ideology that was broader than just the African-American experience. I also look at Malcolm in terms of being dynamic, in terms of being controversial, and I think we'll talk about some of those controversial statements that were made by Malcolm X. He was uncompromising, and he really probably reflected more accurately the wishes and aspiration of the masses of black people during the time than some of the other leaders. Malcolm lived during a time of controversy, and I think it's important to put his contributions in their clear historical context. At the time that Malcolm lived, segregation was rampant. Racism and bigotry were the order of the day. And Malcolm articulated this nightmare. He transcended Martin Luther King's "I have a dream" into "this is the real American nightmare."
Malcolm X's religious and political beliefs were first visible with him becoming a black Muslim.
Because nothing in our book, the Quran, as you call it, Koran, teaches us to suffer peacefully. Our religion teaches us to be intelligent, be peaceful, be courteous, obey the law, respect everyone. But if someone puts his hand on you, send him to the cemetery. That's a good religion. In fact, that's that old-time religion. That's the one that Ma and Pa used to talk about. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and a head for a head, and a life for a life. That's a good religion. And then anybody, no one resents that kind of religion being taught but a wolf who intends to make you his meal. This is the way it is with the white man in America. He's a wolf, and you're a sheep. Anytime a shepherd, a pastor, teach you and me not to run from the white man, and at the same time teach us don't fight the white man, he's a traitor to you and me. Don't lay down our life all by itself. No. Preserve your life. It's the best thing you got. And if you got to give it up, let it be even Stephen.
As Malcolm matured, he saw no distinction. Because if you check out his speeches, he often said that you're nothing but an African. And he said to us many, many times that unless you understand what's going on in the Congo, you cannot understand what's going on in Mississippi. He said that the same sides are drawn up. The same thing is at stake. He said unless we understand both of them, we can't understand either of them. He made that crystal clear. He also made it clear to us that the importance of studying history and analyzing history and taking what we study and put it into concrete practice. He was telling us that this is the only way that you can decide whether or not the theory is true or correct is when you put it into practice. In other words, Malcolm was telling us that organization and study is the indispensable link. There's an indispensable link there between theory and action. And it was Malcolm who helped to bring those things together.
So what we have to do is what they did. They agreed to stop quarreling among themselves. Any little spat that they had, they'd settle it among themselves. Go into a huddle. Don't let the enemy know that you got a disagreement. Instead of us airing our differences in public, we have to realize we're all the same family. And when you have a family squabble, you don't get out on the sidewalk. If you do, everybody calls you uncouth, unrefined, uncivilized, savage. If you don't make it at home, you settle it at home. You get in the closet, argue it out behind closed doors. And then when you come out on the street, you pose a common front.